What it do is your man Savalas. The SABA checking in with Mark Clark in the Sports Parade Magazine podcast. Y'all go ahead and give him a call at 713-553-6370. Y'all hit me up at Savalas.com. He give it to you straight up with no chaser. Just how I like my yak. Keeping up with the Joneses, so I gotta get paid. Fresh car, hood, ain't got my arms straight. I'm keeping up with the Joneses. A couple dollars in change. Bad chick on my hip, got it made. And I don't even know who they is. I never met them or hung out with their kids. Didn't get an invitation over the crib. Now that I think about it.
Get ready, America. Up next is the fastest growing podcast in the nation, the Sports Parade Magazine podcast, heard daily by tens of thousands, hosted by the one and only Mark Clark, the man with the New Orleans accent who gives it to you straight with no chaser. Damn, I love that Mark Clark. Give him a call, 713-553-6370. Email him, markclark@sportsparademagazine.com, or follow him on Twitter at markswords or at sportsparademag. Or listen via any phone. Simply dial 619-550-0516 and at the prompt number 4. There's no better way to advertise or hit your target market than with the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast. Call 713-553-6370 for rates. And now, without further ado, the man, my main man, he's a bad man, Mark Clark.
Oh, get it, baby, get it, baby, get it. Always happy to join you and have you join me on the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast. Today, Friday, April 26th, and it just doesn't get more exciting than last night. You have the NBA playoffs. You have the college powers that be meeting, deciding on the playoff system and how all that's going to work. And then you have the NFL draft. The winners, the losers, the girlfriends, the old girlfriends, the new girlfriends, the agents, the tears of joy and the tears of those that are left in the green room without being called on the first day. So it's going to be an exciting, fast-packed, fun edition of the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast. And as the lady said, as my girl said, you hear that voice, you know that New Orleans accent. That's right, it's your boy, Mark Clark, publishing editor of Sports Parade Magazine and sportsparademagazine.com and the Daily Podcast. And as always, get at me on Twitter, at MarksWord or at Sports Parade Mag. But before we get to the show, we break down that and the NBA and the world of college football. We have to talk about one of our great sponsors that brings the Sports Parade Magazine podcast to you on a daily basis. The award-winning, the fastest growing podcast sports in the nation. Now over 40,000 daily listeners. And it's great sponsors like the Low T Centers of the Greater Houston area. That's right, the Low T Centers of the Greater Houston area. Simply go to lowtcenter.com and check out what it's all about. But it's for the fellas. Fellas, listen to me. Sometimes you just feel a little bit tired. Don't have the energy, the strength, low motivation, maybe getting tired at work, weight gain, really can't explain it. Sometimes you're just irritable. Well, you know what? You can restart your engine because it may be simple as low testosterone. And a simple 30-minute test in the office of the Low T Centers of the Greater Houston area can bring all of the answers that you may not have known. If your testosterone is a little bit low or a lot low, which tends to be as men get up there over the age of 35, guess what? One shot, and a regular routine at the Low T Centers of Greater Houston, where all insurances are accepted. The benefits will include for you, fellas, improved muscle mass, boosted energy, weight loss, improved strength, increased bone density, decreased irritability, and turning back the clock, baby. Improved sexual desire. It should have some Barry White music playing. You heard it. Improved sexual desire. Do you need anything else to know but that, fellas? Simply call in the Greater Houston area, Low T Centers of the Greater Houston area. So whether you're in the Woodlands, whether you're in Sugar Land, whether you're in Houston, whether you're even in Beaumont, simply call the Low T Centers of the Greater Houston area. 877-544-5698. That's 877-544-5698. And soon they'll be in Louisiana as well. 877-544-5698. Remember, gentlemen, it's time to restart your engines with the Low T Centers of the greater Houston area. LowTCenter.com. Check them out. You won't regret it. It'll be like the fountain of youth for the fellas. Well, before we get to all of the winners and losers in the NFL draft last night, let's talk a little bit about college football, which has kind of been swept under the rug. You know, all of the powers that be, and when I say the powers that be, I'm talking about the bowl presidents, the major conference presidents, athletic directors, the people that now run college football, not the NCAA. And they've decided to put together finally for the 14 season, get rid of the BCS and going to have, after spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to determine a name with these different companies of what they should call this playoff system, they came up with, of all things, they've come up with, yes, of all the monkey-ass crazy things, they came up with the college football playoffs. That's going to be the name of it. The college football playoffs, or the college football championship, I guess, eventually. So they couldn't come up with a better name, so they just called it with a TIS, as an old lady once told me. They called it with a TIS. But they got together, and it's going to still incorporate some of the major power players. The semifinals, the first host of the two semifinal games will be the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl. The first championship game will be played, of all places, Cowboy Stadium. Jerry Jones and that big Mecca, that big shrine that he built in Dallas, in Irving, Texas. And they brought the Cotton Bowl back into the picture with that stadium. But they're going to still incorporate the bowl games. Now, it still remains to be seen in terms of who's going to be on the selection committee, because that's still like the same problem with the BCS that we had. Are you indeed putting the top now 4, 6 teams, or are you getting the top teams in there? Or what if you have a situation where you have 8 to 10 one-loss teams, and then you still have the same problem? But at least they're making some effort to go down the road towards a playoff system. So that's exciting. But I tell you what, we've talked about it on the Sports Parade Magazine podcast before. What's in real danger is basically the disintegration of the NCAA as a governing authority. They're losing that so-called air of invincibility. They're losing the moral high ground where they can basically say, our word is law, our word is bond. People are backing off of them. They're putting up a fight. We talked about it when they had all of the bad incidents when the NCAA governing authority agents investigating the University of Miami did not do their due diligence, but they wanted to come down hard on the University of Miami. And the president, Donald Shalel, said, oh, no, it can't. It's not going to go down. It's not going to be hearsay that we just accept whatever punishment that you hand down. And you see it up and down on these major conferences in terms of the university presidents and the ADs and the head coaches, particularly in football, but even in basketball, where they're starting to balk at the law of the NCAA. And this meeting about the playoffs in football is also determined whether they will not even have the NCAA as a governing body even involved anymore. That it'll be strictly in terms of the money, the rules, and any penalties will be done by the top conferences. So when your member institutions start balking at you, you're in big trouble. And, you know, this has to be really a jar for the likes of a Jared Tarkanian, who first challenged the NCAA in 1977 when he took him to court, claiming lack of due process and enforcement proceedings, way back when, in 1977. So to talk to Shark, he was maybe way ahead of the game, because he set down that opening gauntlet of somebody actually challenging the NCAA. And there's not been many successful cases or instances of that. And NCAA, as you know, has been just a power that's run amok in terms of how they laying down rules and penalties. The latest big penalty, I guess, a year ago was against Penn State and that Jerry Sandusky deal. And some people said maybe they should have banned football from that program. Others said, did it have anything to do with football? Does it have anything to do when you just don't have control, lack of institutional control? So that debate went on, but at the end of the day, the NCAA as a governing body has definitely been weakened. And something has to be done in terms of the leadership, in terms of Dr. Emmerich, ex-LSU president. Something has to be done in terms of the future of that organization as a governing body, because if eventually we're going down a path when the member institutions, particularly the ones of power, do not respect or recognize or trust the NCAA as their governing body and as their basically judge, jury, and executioner, if they don't, then all of a sudden you open up a can of worms that maybe can lead to things such as paying college athletes, paying them a stipend. This has been an ongoing thing. All of the billions, not millions, but billions of dollars that are generated with college football and college basketball and struggling athletes, because everybody doesn't get to make that walk into the NBA or into the WNBA if you're a female, or into the world of the NFL as they did in Radio City Music Hall, the NFL draft last night. Everybody doesn't get that chance. There's a lot of struggling athletes, and the rules tend to be archaic in terms of being able to hold down a job, in terms of being able to accept a meal from someone that's related to the program or part of the program. So we could be going down that slippery slope, because we've talked about this over and over and over, and the NCAA has basically run amok like a dictatorship. And now the piper may be getting paid because these big member schools, member institutions, member conferences, you saw it in basketball and football. They're just forming alliances. They don't care about the geographic location. It's all about the money, baby. All about the Benjamins. All about that almighty dollar, like the OJ sing. And when it gets to that, and they get so powerful, and they have all this money pouring in from ESPN, from Fox, from CBS, and from different regional cable networks, and like the University of Texas, you have your own, basically your own dedicated TV for your sports, particularly football and basketball. There's so much money, and there's not a lot of revenue sharing, that they basically begin to have the power, and you're going to do what they say do. So that remains to be seen, but that's one of the things that's being played out as we speak. So we're going to take our first break on the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast, and when we come back, once again, we'll be talking about the NBA playoffs before we delve into that NFL action. Remember, this is Mark Clark in a Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast, coming right at you, baby, because I give it to you straight with no chaser.
What it do is your man Savalas, the SABA, checking in with Mark Clark in the Sports Parade Magazine Podcast. Y'all go ahead and give him a call at 713-553-6370. Y'all hit me up at Savalas.com. He give it to you straight up with no chaser. Just how I like my yak. Keeping up with the Joneses, so I gotta get paid. Fresh car, hood, and got my arms straight. I'm keeping up with the Joneses. A couple dollars in change. Bad chick on my hip, got it made. And I don't even know who they is. I never met them or hung out with their kids. Didn't get an invitation over the crib. Now that I think about it,
Get ready, America. Up next is the fastest growing podcast in the nation, the Sports Parade Magazine Podcast. Heard daily by tens of thousands. Hosted by the one and only Mark Clark, the man with the New Orleans accent who gives it to you straight with no chaser. Damn, I love that Mark Clark. Give him a call, 713-553-6370. Email him, markclark@sportsparademagazine.com, or follow him on Twitter at markswords or at sportsparademag. Or listen via any phone. Simply dial 619-550-3333 0516 and at the prompt number 4. There's no better way to advertise or hit your target market than with the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast. Call 713-553-6370 for rates. And now, without further ado, the man, my main man, he's a bad man, Mark Clark.
Oh, welcome back to the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast. And you got it right, baby. I'm Mark Clark, the man with the New Orleans accent that gives it to you straight with no chaser. I'm going to welcome you back to the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast for Friday, April 26, 2013, post-NFL draft, at least the first round. We still have a couple of more days because that's become a real mecca, a real circus revolving the NFL draft. But before we delve into that, let's move on to NBA playoffs, the playoff action, because that's always exciting. Because for one thing, it means the regular season is over. Let me tell you something. There's no reason why. I mean, there's every reason you can see why the NFL is number one, baby. The NFL is number one because, you know, you go to towns like Atlanta and you have the ATL-holics and all of the traveling, they travel from city to city, all of the backers in every city, whether it's the Eagles, whether it's the Giants, you name the team. There's such a passion, the fantasy football, everything that circles around encompasses the NFL. You have the NFL Network that we see that Major League Baseball and the NBA have duplicated it, but there's nothing like football. It's like year-round. The NBA regular season is just a joke. You got guys that just are not going out there playing. They're not hustling. They'll tell you, even the Hall of Famers like Charles Barkley and Shaq will tell you, well, you know, it's totally different in the postseason in relation to the regular season of the NBA. Man, that's a hard pill to swallow when you're asking people to pay home games of 42 games. It's not like that in the NFL. The NFL, every week, it's blood, sweat, and tears laid out there. Every week, you win, you die with your team. I mean, it affects your mood. It affects everything. That's why it's number one. So at least with the NBA playoffs starting, we have some semblance of some excitement, even though some of these series are dogs. The Miami Heat. Baby, the Bucks, you can wrap it up. It's 3-0, but, you know, it might as well be. It doesn't make a difference. It's going to be 4 and done. The Heat are just rolling, y'all. They're rolling. LeBron James is on a mission. And you know what? This is eerily similar to Michael Jordan in his prime. So get ready. The likes of Charles Barkley, the likes of Reggie Miller, all those great players, Patrick Ewing, that happened to play in the era of the great Michael Jordan, because you have a lot of players. I don't want to name names, but Kevin Durant, you're about the same age as the great LeBron James. And unless somebody just steps up or something happens to LeBron James, it's going to be a long, long haul for the next 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 years, because he's just that young and just that good. And can't make a prediction just yet, but it looks like the Heat are going to be two-peating the way they're rolling. Elsewhere in the East, the Knicks, 2 up on Boston. Let me just say this. This is for the executives of the Boston Celtics. No one beats Father Time, baby. As I always tell my good friend Eric Asher, those are dog years, baby. Dog years on an athlete's body. No one beats him. Why you thought you could go into a season with Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett and think you still had a chance is beyond me. Why you didn't just trade them off and make a move for the future, I don't understand. It's just not going to happen. And so all these fools, let me say fools of the week, when Rajon Rondo went down and it said, Boston's just gone on a run, they're doing so well, you know, you don't need them. That's fool's gold. Fool's gold. You don't replace your best player. And make no mistake about it, at his age, Rajon Rondo is the best player on the Celtics team. You don't replace him, and all of a sudden you get so excited saying, hey, we won a few games, we won 10, we're doing better. No. The problem is Rondo needs some young studs running with him. And Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett no longer resemble young guns, young studs. They're more like old dinosaurs. The Knicks, you know, it's nice seeing, you know, all of the excitement around Carmelo and is he going to finally get out the first round. But at the end of the day, you got to be crazy. You got to be out your monkey ass mind. If you think Carmelo Anthony is going to lead you to a title, it ain't happening. It's not happening. We talked about Kevin Durant playing in the era of LeBron James. Well, guess what? You too, Carmelo, because guess what? When if it comes down to a series in the finals or the semifinals or whatever, and the Miami Heat are playing the New York Knicks, it ain't happening for the Knicks, baby. Not with Carmelo, because guess what? They put Kevin Durant on him, and it's done. It's done, son. It's over. He shuts him down. Carmelo can be the most prolific scorer that you've seen in years to come in the league, which he is, not taking anything away from him, but he is not on the level of LeBron James. And LeBron shuts him down defensive-wise and makes him look very, very small, y'all. So enjoy beating up on Boston, because after that, it's not going to get any easier. Pacers, 2 up on Atlanta. Atlanta may win one game, but the Pacers will wind up winning that series. Pacers have depth. They have a lot of physicality. That's something that's going to be needed if you're going to try to unseat LeBron James and the Miami Heat. You're going to need that physicality. The Knicks don't bring it. The Pacers surely do. Brooklyn and Chicago. The Nets, the Nets are all of the excitement of the partial ownership by Jay-Z and the new uniforms and the new arena and, the nice stores, Lopez. And this is a team that still is not ready for prime time. It's not. It's still the Knicks in New York, baby, not the Brooklyn Nets. It's still the Knicks. As for Chicago, you're not going to do too much. You got a lot of heart. You got a lot of hustle. But if you don't have your main man in there, if you don't have your main man, Derrick Rose, in there, and there's been much that's been said, it's been a long time now, over 9 months since the rehab of the knee and the surgery. But he simply says he's not ready, and I don't think he's coming back no matter what. Whether they win this series and advance to the conference semifinals, he's not going to be back. And without Derrick Rose, it's an uphill battle, an uphill climb. But hats off to him. Got to give him a round of applause for the effort and the heart that they're showing and displaying against Brooklyn. Western Conference. Let's start with the top. OKC, 2 up on the Houston Rockets. Man, the Rockets, they're good, but they're a couple of years away. They're at least 1 or 2 players away. They need a big, dominant guy. Not saying anything because Dwight Howard's going to be free agent. He would look great with James Harden and company. Really great. Jeremy Lin is a bench player, a role player at best. We've seen it in the series where he simply cannot handle defense or offense to the likes of a Russell Westbrook. He simply can't handle it. When you put a stud on Jeremy Lin, he just crumbles. He's just not ready for prime time. You want to bring him in spurts, in moments where he can go on a run and get the crowd involved, come off the bench. He's a 6th man at best. But you got James Harden, you got a bunch of young players like this Beverly kid that has a lot of heart, that's displayed a lot of heart. And if you're able to get a big guy, maybe you might be able to do something. But right now, OKC's up 2-0. It could be a sweep, but I think Houston may get one game at home starting tomorrow night. But I will say this about Oklahoma City with Durant and Westbrook and Ibaka and Cephaletsha. OKC is not the same team that they were last year. That's pretty scary considering that they lost in the finals and they weren't good enough to get past the Heat. They're not the same without James Harden. They simply are not the same. Kevin Martin, nice little player, can hit the threes and can score. He's not James Harden. James Harden was a difference maker in terms of handling the ball, distributing the ball, the point, and attacking. Not that type of player in Martin, and they're simply not the same. Another fool has to go to the Lakers. Has to go. Well, we all know they rolled Kobe too hard. They rolled that horse. I said it over and over again. The Lakers had no business being in these playoffs. Kobe or no Kobe, they had no business being in the playoffs. They made it. They would have been better suited trying to get into some form of a top pick or better pick than they would get from making it. San Antonio is just shutting them down. I mean, Kobe's gone. Kobe, the decision has to be made in terms of this new amnesty thing that came after the new CBA, where one contract can basically be wiped away. The player will still get paid, but the team will not be responsible salary cap-wise. And with that luxury tax hitting a team like the Lakers, and I think it's like $31 million that's owed to Kobe, let me tell you something. You do not come back in 6-7 months from an Achilles. So you're talking about basically he's not going to be available next year since this injury happened so late in the season. And then when he comes back, you're talking about a 37-year-old approaching 38-year-old player. I don't know about y'all, but loss aside, there has to be some long and hard thought about amnestying that contract, at least for next year, and trying to do something with this team. I don't know what's going on with Dwight Howard. He does not seem the same player that he was in Orlando. You know, has he not fully recovered? He's wearing this whole kind of shoulder harness thing, and we know about all of the back surgery he had. I don't think he's quite healthy, and I don't think he fits in. But the biggest dumb move was hiring Mike D'Antoni, Bush's son, that took over after his dad died. He simply doesn't have a clue. Because there's no way you're going to get an old team with the likes of Meta World Peace, Antoine Jamison, Steve Blake, Steve Nash, and you kind of be a running gun team with a coach like that doesn't know how to feed big men like Paul Gasol, like Dwight Howard. That's crazy, y'all. That's like some hard stuff. Woo! Hit me. That kind of decision making. And you see Steve Nash. Steve Nash is like a wounded dog. Somebody will just go out there and just like, hey, pull him to the side. Come on, man. Come on. It's time to go into the booth. Time to go into the NBA Hall of Fame, College Basketball Hall of Fame. Time to move. Time to move to the Canadian Hall of Fame. It's time to move to Australian Hall of Fame. It's time to become a legend of the game. Because Steve Nash lost it a couple of years ago, and this year it's just like totally skidded out of control. Anytime you're counting on Steve Blake, these are journeyman players. And believe it or not, Dwight Howard had a better chance with Orlando than he does with this Laker team. 2-0, you might as well say 4. It's done, son. Denver and Golden State. Golden State, tragic loss of David Lee before the playoffs started, where he basically kind of ripped the hip muscle off the bone, a horrifically painful injury, and a kid that's really was dominant. He had size, he could rebound, he could block, he could intimidate, and he also could score from anywhere on the court. It's extremely hard to overcome that. Denver, they have that knack like Indiana in the East of being that tough physical team, being able to score, but they don't have that one superstar at the end of games, the last 2-3 minutes of a game, a guy that can really take control. But given that, it will be a miracle if Golden State upsets Denver in this first round, and if they do, it's all because of the coach. Hands down, man down, Mark Jackson, because he's done a terrific job to have this series already tied at 1-1. But neither of these teams are going to be a threat to Oklahoma City or San Antonio. And next up, Lakers and Memphis, now 2-1 after the Grizzlies put a beating on the Clippers last night. Chris Paul and company, the ex-Hornet, just been terrific. It's just really a flourish and done basically what he always does with the Clippers and Lob City to Blake Griffin and all that. But there still remains the question, do the Clippers have the type of team, particularly a half-court style of being able to score from different points on the court if they take the ball out of Chris's hand. And that's exactly what Memphis did last night. You take Chris Paul out of the game, being double team or triple team or whatever you have to do, and you wait for other guys to step up. Clippers have been able to do it from game to game, but not on a consistent basis. Therein lies the rub with the Clippers as a potential threat to Oklahoma City or San Antonio. Memphis, they're always going to have that thing about we have the physical toughness and the strength with Marc Gasol. We have that ability to be able to knock people off the block, to be able to score when it gets down to wine and grind time, when it's tough, when you have to make those half-court set adjustments. Tell you what, Memphis and Clippers is going to be a great, great series. Whoever comes out, though, I wonder if they're going to be too weak to be able to deal with San Antonio and Oklahoma City, who basically going to have free rides to who's going to determine that Western Conference championship. Woo! At least we're into the NBA, baby. That's the best thing, the best news ever. But we're going to take our second break and final break, and when we come back, it's going to be NFL, more NFL, and the NFL draft, baby, on the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast.
What it do is your man Savalas, the SAVA checking in with Mark Clark in the Sports Parade Magazine Podcast. Y'all go ahead and give him a call at 713-553-6370. Y'all hit me up at Savalas.com. He give it to you straight up with no chaser. Just how I like my yak. Keeping up with the Joneses, so I gotta get paid. Fresh car, hood, ain't got my arms straight. I'm keeping up with the Joneses. A couple dollars in change. Bad chick on my hip, got it with the Joneses. And I don't even know who they is. I never met them or hung out with their kids. Didn't get an invitation over the crib.
Get ready, America. Up next is the fastest growing podcast in the nation, the Sports Parade Magazine Podcast, heard daily by tens of thousands, hosted by the one and only Mark Clark, the man with a New Orleans accent who gives it to you straight with no chaser. Damn, I love that Mark Clark. Give him a call, 713-553-6370. Email him, markclark@sportsparademagazine.com, or follow him on Twitter at Mark's Words or at Sports Parade Mag, or listen via any phone. Simply dial 619-550-0516 and at the prompt number 4. There's no better way to advertise or hit your target market than with the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast. Call 713-553-6370 for rates. And now, without further ado, the man, my main man, he's a bad man, Mark Clark.
Oh, that's me, baby. That's me. That's right. I'm a bad man. I'm bringing to you Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast as I give it to you straight with no chaser, baby. I don't mince words. I don't play games. I just give it to you like a T.I. is. Whether the good, the bad, the ugly, you can always count on Mark Clark of the Sports Parade Magazine Podcast to give it to you straight, baby. My honest, heartfelt, passionate opinion. And remember, follow me at Mark's Word or at Sports Parade Mag on Twitter. Well, we left off. We talked a little bit earlier about this new NFL college football playoffs that's finally going to get around and replacing that BCS. We talked about the NBA, but now it's about that NFL draft. Man, let me tell you something about the draft. You know, I heard so many people, all the experts, the Mel Kipers of the world, everybody said how this was probably one of the worst drafts in years. And let me tell you something, baby. It played out. It played out. Number 1 overall pick to the Kansas City Chiefs, Eric Fisher, offensive tackle. And guess what? 4 out of the next 5 players were offensive tackles. You very rarely see that. There were only one quarterback taken. Manuel, taken by Buffalo, right after the Saints picks. And no running back taken. I think that's the first time since the 60s, since 1962 to be exact, that no running backs were taken in the top 20. You know, football and the NFL draft is such a cyclical thing. I can remember when I first started the Sports Parade Magazine, the actual publication, I can remember it was the year that Tiger Woods bust onto the scene and really became like a superstar. I think he won the Masters, some ridiculous number, about 16, 17 strokes. And I remember always my main team, my love, anybody knows that, but I'm fair, it's going to be my New Orleans Saints. But I call it as it is. I'm not going to be a homer. I'm not going to be a fanatic. There's a difference between being a fan and a fanatic. Well, anyway, I can remember there was this big discussion about all the experts on the ESPNs, on the different cable news, sports channels, sports talk radio. Everything was about how, tight ends, that was a done deal. The tight end position was dead. There was not any kind of use anymore for tight ends. It was done. It was over. Now, you fast forward a decade and it's like, wow, tight end is like a glamour position. Not only is it not dead and gone, it's a glamour position. You have all of the great, dynamic, game-changing, money-making players, tight end, the tight end position. And it's adjusted everything in terms of how offensive scheme and how defenses align their defense. They all need somebody to cover the tight end now, where it was a dead issue. That brings me to the Saints' #1 pick. All of the finally bounty gate after we lose the second round pick tonight is over, and we can concentrate with it. They took the best available safety in Texas safety, Kenny Vaccaro. And one of the big things about him, they say, is his ability to cover the tight end. Time will remain to be seen with a weak draft if any of these players emerge and become legitimate stars in the league. It's my hope that Vaccaro can do it. I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. It's a crapshoot because when I say that the NFL is a cyclical thing, and I talk about how back when I first started the publication, when Tiger Woods emerged on the scene, I think that was 97, and they said, the tight end position was done. Well, now you have this poor draft from top to bottom in terms of talent, in terms of perceived talent. Now, we don't know until 3 or 4 years down the road if any of these players of this draft will prove the experts, the naysayers, wrong. But now we have all these offensive tackles that are gone. We even had guards that went before defensive ends, and only one quarterback and no running back. But I tell you what was strange is they're saying like the running back position now. They've been saying it for a few years, but particularly this year, with none being taken in the first round, that forget about running backs. They're a dime a dozen. It's a system where they're, let me tell you something. The NFL is like copycat. It's a copycat league. Whatever works for one team, whatever's popular for one team, whatever success one team has, all of these multi-million-dollar executives, these experts, they sit back, they don't do what they know works. They don't rely on their own talent evaluation. They don't rely on the tested, tried, and true. They all go to, well, what's hot? What's going on around the league now? So if it's all about the quarterbacks, given the rules and everything, guess what? It's all about the quarterbacks. And that means you're going to have players to cover all of these different tight ends and wide receivers. But I, for one, let me say it, on this date, Friday, April 26, 2013, the running back position will see a resurgence in the next 5 years. I don't for a minute believe that there'll ever be a day in the NFL where the running back position is an afterthought. Don't think it. Don't believe it. Now, yes, by you not taking any in the first round and you have this perceived notion that somehow it's just a position that you can get later in rounds, a lot of guys are not going to get paid the top dollars. They're not going to get Adrian Peterson type of money. So what does that mean? Does that mean that guys are going to be coming into the world of college football and not want to play the running back position because they say, hey, there's not that money? I don't believe that. I think you're going to see in the next 2 or 3 years, at least that minimum 5-year span, where you're going to have one of the greatest running back crops ever. And just like the tight end position, just like that with the Aaron Hernandez of the world, just like that with those type of players, with the Gronkowskis, with those type of players, those type of talents, everyone wants that terrific tight end. You're going to see the running back position have a resurgence because it just boggles my mind to see how the draft and everything has evolved. But is it really evolving, or is it just copycat? Everyone says, well, this is dead, we're going to move to that. So the tight end is so big now. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to see a resurgence. But for this draft, this first round, it was strictly, it was rough. No star-studded players out there, let's face it. They're essential to the game. They're essential to the safety of the quarterback. They're essential to everything. And you got to be super talented, particularly to play left tackle position in the NFL. You have to have some skills. You know, you got, like that song says, I got the moves like Jagger. You got to have the moves like a defensive end and the quick reflexes. But you also have to have that Jumbowski about you. When I talk about that, that's that grind it out, get dirty, blocking techniques and stuff like that of an offensive lineman. So that's very special and now rewarded skill set when you see all of these first-round tackles that went in the first round of the NFL draft. But, you know, you had a lot of Alabama players. Man, it's amazing. I want to see if these players pan out. If these top players pan out, I want to see if New York Jets cornerback D. Milner, the cornerback from Alabama, who's going to replace excuse me, whether they want to say it or not, he's going to replace Revis Island. He's going to replace him. So I want to see if he has the goods. I want to see if a guy that I interviewed during the BCS championship against LSU, called Chance Warmack, who went in the 10th pick to the Titans, a guard in the 10th pick. That boggles your mind. You can see the tackle position, but a guard going at number 10? Wow. I want to see if they have the goods. I want to see if DJ Fluker, another tackle for Alabama, has the goods. You had Alabama going at that position in the draft last night in the NFL draft with players going 9, 10, and 11. Let me tell you something. It's not too soon to start talking about spring practice and summer getting ready for college football. Nick Saban's got a dynasty going. He was there slapping hands with all of his players that are gone in the draft, congratulating them. If you're a high school player, and you turn into the NFL draft where dreams come true, baby, where you got the brand new girlfriend or you got the old girlfriend and she's fixed up and you got mama in her best Sunday dress and you got uncle and all the different brothers and sisters and everybody with the agent because you know you're about to get paid and this is the culmination of your dreams and you're hugging Roger Goodell. Everything. Only in America, baby. And if you're a young college high school player and you're looking at this and you turn on the TV just in, say, the top 15 draft picks, you turn it on. And what do you see? You see Nick Saban, and he's smiling, he's grinning. And you see all of these Alabama players going, not only in the top first round, but just in the top 10, 11 picks. How do you recruit against that? How do you convince somebody, you know what, I know what you saw. I know that he's able to make dreams come true on the collegiate level and make your pro aspirations come true. But come to us. We can do better or we can do that. That's a hard pitch. They better watch out because it's going to be extremely difficult competing against Nick Saban. Boy, I can't but wonder what would have happened if Nick Saban hadn't made that dreadful decision to go to to go to Miami in the pros and then come back basically failing just to take over that Alabama program. I can't imagine what he would have done with LSU. We're still top and we're still doing it at LSU, but man, that's extremely difficult to go up against Nick Saban in Alabama. But that's for another show. And speaking of LSU, Barkovius Mingo, the defensive end, once again, LSU defense the last 3 years, these players, he goes number 6 to the Cleveland Browns. They've had a hell of a run with top 10, top 15, top 20 defensive players the last 3 years. And we still have one big name out there, Honey Badger. You know, I thought it was ironic that in a bad draft, a draft that's kind of devoid of star quality, devoid of players capable of making an impact in the NFL, you had John Gruden. And all due apologies to Coach Steve Spurrier at South Carolina, I'm going to call him the old ball coach. You have the old ball coach, John Gruden. He's saying that of all the film that he saw and all these former first-round picks on that LSU defense, of all these great players, and of this draft, that the Honey Badger to him stood out and was the best and should go in the first round. And Mel Kiper and everybody pushed back and they said, well, that's not going to happen. Maybe around 3 or 4 and all the different problems, and it's been well documented, the problems with suspensions and drugs and whether he was weed and whether he was, mentally ready for that BCS championship game 2 years ago and all the different things surrounding him. But at the end of the day, John Gruden broke it down. He said, you know what, maybe it's the people drafting in this league that are making a mistake because he has the talent. And that brings me to another issue with this NFL draft and with talent evaluation. Too often we look at the measurables. We look at how big, how strong, how fast. That's that whole combine experience. Can a guy leap tall buildings with a single bounce? Does he have a 35-inch vertical? Can he bench press 285 35 times? How quick is his 40? Is it 5'1"? Is it 4'5"? Is it 4'0"? Is it 4'1"? Whatever the case may be. And we look at that. But we don't look at is, can he play? Can he play? Does he have the instincts? I'm going to tell you right now, with the Saints' number one pick, Kenny Vaccaro, what I'm looking for, I'm not looking for Hall of Famer. I'm not looking for Ed Reed. If I get that, that's great. That's gravy. That's fantastic. If I get that. What I'm looking for is somebody that can play, that can be a difference maker. May not be the fastest, may not be the biggest, but he can impact a game several times a year. Sort of like Sammy Knight used to do in that position. Sammy Knight wasn't highly thought of coming into the NFL. He had high expectations. He was considered slow. All of it had merit. All of it was true. But guess what? He had a knack for the ball. And too often we see people that have all the measurables. They have the talent. They have the speed. But guess what? They just don't have instincts for it. It's just like any other job. If you're a cop, if you're a firefighter, if you're a radio host, if you talk sports, whatever the case may be, it got to be for you. It got to be in you. And a lot of times the guys don't have that natural passion and understanding and knowledge of the game. So that's my hope for the Saints pick. That's my hope, my expectations. I'm not expecting the stars and the moons, but too often we make so many mistakes. I hope John Gruden is right. I hope he understands that in time, this kid, Tyrann Mathieu, may be considered, should have been the number one overall pick. Now, some people will say, well, he was exposed in that BCS championship game, basically the last game of his collegiate career, given the suspensions last year. Maybe so. Or was it a case of the drugs and just not being physically or mentally ready, as reports have said that he told his girlfriend that he didn't want to play? Who knows? But I know one thing. Tyrann Mathieu, Honey Badger, has true instincts for the game of football. You can't coach that. And speaking of some of the biggest losers of the draft, you got to point to Geno Smith, quarterback. Did a lot of talking. Everyone said this was the name. Not only did you not go in the first round, it's embarrassing. I always say, do like Manny Tao did, the linebacker for Notre Dame. He didn't show up. He got far away from every camera that he could be. And thank God he did. Can you imagine him being in that mecca, that environment with these lights constantly on you, these cameras, they're watching every move, every frown of your face, every bead that rolls down your forehead of sweat, every flinch when the phone rings, but it's not for you or it's for someone else, or it's someone telling you just to be patient, but they're not picking you. As in the case of Geno Smith, it's horrific. We've seen players go through it over and over. But guess what? When you fall completely out of the first, doesn't mean you won't be a success. Doesn't mean that you can't still be the star. But what it does mean is that you've been embarrassed and you've been humbled and you've been humiliated. Let's face it. Don't go there if you're not sure that you're going to be. And there were too many signs that maybe only 3 or 4 teams needed a quarterback, one of which was Buffalo, that took Manuel from Florida State. And a big surprise that people say is like crazy for them doing it. But nonetheless, don't go to Radio City Music Hall. Don't walk that red carpet as they have now when the guys are stepping out of the SUVs and being interviewed. Because it's just a setup for heartbreak. Now you have what I call the fools, the foolish criticism. My fools of the week, all these media people, and even fans on Twitter. Yeah, you fans are saying, oh, he says he's not showing up. He's not showing up for day 2 of the draft tonight. Why the hell would he? Why would he? Guess what? Roger Goodell only introduced the first round. You only get to have that photo op and that hug with the commissioner for the big dogs, number 1. After that, it's going to be secondary deputy commissioner. So why would he? That doesn't mean that he's a quitter or anything. It just means, hey, I'm just getting my mind ready to do what I have to do and have a big chip on my shoulder and try to achieve. And speaking of which, I thought the greatest winner of all of the special announcements, and you had the thing that Belichick ruined with the Boston, the ex-Patriot, and talking about everything that city has been through with the terrorist bombing. But to see this kid that the Saints organization, Tom Benson, Greg Benson, all the media people, personnel department got together and were able to get this kid from the Make-A-Wish Foundation, St. Jude, from the Louisiana area that has a type of cancer, and to see this kid walk out there to announce the Saints pick of Kenny Vaccaro, I mean, it was, to me, one of the highlights of the draft. And the kid, had so much courage and his love for his team, the passion, despite everything that he's gone through. It's about the Saints and who that nation and NFL, his favorite team, and the poise that he showed, and just the calm demeanor and to be able to pose with Vaccaro, with the commissioner. I thought it was wonderful, and my hats off go off to the Saints organization for that. That was a class move. Class move from a class organization that has been hit hard, but I really thought it was wonderful. But those Te'o was a big drop. Those are the big losers, Te'o and Geno Smith. And then you could also say, the running back position, even though everybody said basically that, it wasn't going to be much out there in terms of being picked high for those particular positions. But those were the biggest losers. And there's already been talk that maybe Geno Smith may indeed show up because maybe Jacksonville have already told him that we're going to pick you early so you can come. But I don't know if he still wants to do that or not. To me, I would just let that go. If it's not done on the first round, just move on. I think anybody you see that's still there for the second, third, fourth, or even fifth round is guys that maybe don't know if they're going to be drafted. They're just so excited. It doesn't make a difference if it's third or fourth round. I want to go out there and hug anybody, even if it's a deputy commissioner. And that's a wonderful thing because, after all, even if you're a free agent signee, but particularly if you're a draft pick, it's something that you can always hang your hat on in your legacy of your athletic career that you were an NFL draft pick. And that's very, very special because very few people get to play this game. Very few people have the talent, the luck, and just basically God bless ability to be able to achieve those dreams, and to see these parents, these mothers, and the girlfriend, and all of the uncles and brothers and sisters. It's a beautiful, it's a wonderful thing to see. But I tell you what, seeing this draft, man, it really makes anybody shaky in terms of who they have, considering how weak the proverbial talent and the actual talent was. And I tell you what, the Vikings have to be smoking some serious dope. So I already have 2 number ones, and then you basically give up like a second, and a third, and a fifth, some combination of 3 or 4 picks to the Patriots, of all people, just to move back up into the final position in the first round to take a wide receiver that's questionable at best in terms of being even ready to play in a weak, watered down talent pool this year. There's something to be said about that now, and it's not anything good. I mean, you simply don't do that. Now you understand why the likes of the Patriots, organizations like that, get it right more than they get it wrong and have the success that they have. Because they're able to fleece fools. It's like the Raiders. When Al Davis was living, now post Al Davis, trading away top draft picks for multiple years for the likes of Carson Palmer, who was done and shot when he was in Cincinnati. You see these things, and you see these teams like Buffalo taking manual. Look at all the quarterbacks and the players that they've taken. Look at all the money that they gave Fitzgerald to be their franchise quarterback just last year. So the draft in the NFL, when you look at it from afar, you can see tends to be a copycat league, tends to be a prisoner of the moment in terms of what's hot, what's happening right now. And above all else, the good teams, the good organizations, they get it right. You didn't see Buffalo with everybody saying, man, I'd say how fair to them. He's the actual fit to replace Ray Lewis. And they said, hold up. No, it's not going to happen. Not for us. Isaac Newsom said, not for us. Because when you build a Super Bowl winner, like he did, like the Saints did with Peyton, you know what you have to do consistently in talent evaluation to be an ultimate champion. And it's not become a prisoner of the moment. That's why I have so many high hopes for the Saints pick. I finally think the Saints may have gotten it right, and my hope is it's a Sammy Knight type player, but with more athletic ability. That's a Pro Bowler to me. Maybe not in the first year or two, but a guy that you can sit back and say, finally, we have somebody on that defense that can do something. And my hope in this 3rd and 4th round, since we don't have the 2nd round pick, I hope it's defense, and more defense, even though I know we need some help on the offensive line. Because I tell you what, eventually we have to get this defensive unit better if we're going to compete. Because guess what? Everybody in our division, from Carolina to Atlanta, is getting better. And when you look at the NFC as a whole, in the blink of an eye, and I mean the blink of an eye, the NFC West went from a laughingstock to a powerhouse. Just loaded, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. Just loaded. The Rams are good. Seattle's good. And we don't even need to say anything else about San Francisco. So it's going to be tough going in the NFC if you're going to make it to the Super Bowl. And after all, baby, that's the ultimate goal. The Super Bowl, baby. Super Bowl. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me for the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast. This one Friday, April 26th. I'm your boy, the man with the New Orleans accent, baby. That's right, I embrace it. I love my city. Mark Clark, publishing editor of Sports Parade Magazine. And remember, give me a shout out. Follow me on Twitter at MarksWord or at Sports Parade Mag. Make sure you follow our sponsor, Low T Centers of the Greater Houston area. That's lowt.com. Lowt.com. Check them out. lowtcenter.com. Check them out. And remember, I'm going to always give it to you straight with no chaser, baby. We'll be right back at you Monday.
What it do is your man Savalas. The SAVA checking in with Mark Clark in the Sports Parade Magazine podcast. Y'all go ahead and give him a call at 713-553-6370. Y'all hit me up at Savalas.com. He give it to you straight up with no chaser. Just how I like my yak. Keeping up with the Joneses, so I gotta get paid. Fresh car, hood, and got my arms straight. I'm keeping up with the Joneses. A couple dollars in change. Bad chick on my hip, got it with the Joneses. And I don't even know who they is. I never met them or hung out with their kids. Didn't get an invitation over the crib. Now that I think about it, I don't know where they live.